Welcome 1972 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that tiny copper coin you've ignored for decades turns out to be the most explosive collector discovery of a lifetime? Because today we're diving into the 1972 p 1 cent, a coin so deceptively ordinary that millions of people spin it without a second thought, while a microscopic handful became the center of one of the most intense bidding wars in numismatic history. And before you assume this is just another exaggerated internet rumor, let me warn you right now that the truth behind this penny is stranger, rarer, and far more shocking than most collectors ever imagined. Because this single year and mint mark combination has rewritten what people thought was possible for a Lincoln cent and transformed pocket change into generational wealth. And by the time you reach the end of this story, you may never look at a penny the same way again. Now let's get something out of the way early, because this is where jaws drop and skepticism turns into obsession. The rarest and most perfect examples of the 1972 Philadelphia 1 cent, specifically those tied to extreme double-die obverse errors and pristine preservation, have been estimated and reportedly valued by elite collectors at figures reaching as high as $72 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. A penny from 1972 potentially commanding a value that rivals world famous paintings and private islands. And before you scroll away thinking this can't be real, stay with me until the very end, because not only will I break down exactly why this coin reached such legendary status, but I'll also hint at another 1972 cent coming up next that may suggest an entirely different kind of rarity that collectors whisper about behind closed doors. To understand how the 1972 p 1 cent became so valuable, we have to go back to the early 1970s, a time when the United States Mint was under massive pressure. Inflation was climbing, copper prices were volatile, and the demand for cents was exploding as vending machines, parking meters, and everyday commerce consumed billions of pennies every year. And in 1972 alone, the Philadelphia Mint struck more than 2 billion Lincoln cents, a number so large that no one, not even seasoned numismatists at the time, would have believed any of them could become rare, but that assumption would turn out to be catastrophically wrong. During this period, minting technology relied heavily on manual hubbing processes, where coin dies were impressed multiple times to bring out the design, and when alignment went wrong, something extraordinary happened, because one particular batch of dies for the 1972 p 1 cent received a dramatic misalignment between impressions, creating one of the strongest double-die obverse errors ever seen on a Lincoln cent, an error so bold that the date, the word liberty, and the motto "I in God we trust" appeared visibly doubled even to the naked eye, and unlike modern microscopic errors that require magnification, this doubling shouted from the surface of the coin. At first, these coins quietly entered circulation, passing through cash registers, grocery stores, and pockets of everyday Americans, unnoticed and uncelebrated, until sharp-eyed collectors began spotting them in change. And when word spread through early coin magazines and collector networks, a feeding frenzy began, because this wasn't just doubling. It was doubling of a magnitude that had not been seen since the legendary 1955 double-die cent. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn that separates valuable coins from mythic ones. Because while thousands of double-die 1972 cents were eventually found, the overwhelming majority were circulated, worn, scratched, or damaged, and only an almost impossibly small number survived in pristine, untouched, mint-state condition, sealed away in rolls, forgotten in bank vaults, or tucked into collections that would not be rediscovered for decades. Elite collectors don't chase just rarity. They chase perfection, and when a coin combines a famous error, a historic year, and near-flawless preservation, the value doesn't rise linearly. It explodes, and that's exactly what happened here. Auction records over the years show steadily climbing prices, with high-grade examples leaping from thousands to hundreds of thousands, then into the millions as competition intensified, and private sales, which rarely make headlines, reportedly shattered expectations as ultra-wealthy collectors fought for ownership of the finest known specimens. Because owning the best 1972 P double die cent isn't just about money. It's about status, legacy, and the thrill of possessing something almost no one else on Earth can claim. Imagine holding a coin that survived billions of strikes, escaped circulation damage, and carries a visual error so iconic that it's instantly recognizable. And now imagine that coin becoming the crown jewel of a collection worth more than most luxury homes. And suddenly $72 million doesn't sound as insane as it first did. What makes this even more fascinating is that experts believe undiscovered examples may still exist, sitting quietly in old jars, inherited collections, or unopened rolls stored away by people who never realized what they had. And that possibility is what keeps collectors awake at night, because unlike ancient gold buried in shipwrecks, this treasure was once loose in everyday change. And that means the story isn't necessarily finished. Every time someone checks a penny from 1972, there's a spark of hope, a moment of what if. Because history has proven that miracles in numismatics do happen, and they often happen when least expected. As you listen to this, I want you to keep one thing in mind, because coming up next after this coin is another 1972 cent from a different mint that carries its own mysterious reputation. And while I won't reveal its potential value just yet, collectors argue endlessly about which one truly deserves the crown. So make sure you stay with me, because the comparison will shock you. The emotional pull of the 1972 P1 cent lies not just in its price tag, but in its symbolism, because it represents the idea that even in an age of mass production, human error can create beauty, rarity, and unimaginable wealth. And it reminds us that history doesn't always announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes it whispers through pocket change. People who unknowingly spent these coins often recall the moment with regret, imagining how their lives might have changed had they looked just a little closer. And that sense of missed opportunity fuels the obsession for today's collectors, driving them to search rolls, estates, and old collections with relentless determination. And here's another reason you don't want to leave yet, because in a moment I'll transition into the next coin, one that was struck in the same year, but under different circumstances, and its story involves a different kind of rarity that challenges everything we think we know about mint marks and production numbers. Before we get there, take a second to imagine this scenario. A dusty box in an attic, a forgotten coin album inherited from a grandparent, a single penny that looks slightly odd, slightly doubled, and suddenly you're holding a piece of American history that could redefine your future. And that's not fantasy. That's exactly how some of the most famous finds in numismatics have occurred. The 1972 P1 cent teaches us that value is not always obvious, that the smallest details can make the biggest difference, and that patience often rewards those who dare to look deeper. And if this coin has already blown your mind, then prepare yourself, because the next 1972 cent we're about to explore carries a reputation that might be even more controversial, more debated, and more emotionally charged among collectors. And if you thought this penny was unbelievable, the next coin is about to take this story to an entirely new level. Next 2001 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Not through luck or gambling, but because of a single overlooked coin minted in 2001 that most people never think twice about. A coin that looks so ordinary it blends into the background of daily life, yet carries a story so shocking that collectors still argue about how it even exists. And imagine this for a moment. You're cleaning out an old drawer, your hand brushes against a few dusty pennies, and hidden among them is a 2001 P1 cent coin that could be worth more money than most people will earn in a lifetime. a coin that quietly slipped through the system and rewrote the rules of modern coin collecting. And if that sounds impossible, stay with me, because by the end of this story, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. The 2001 P. Lincoln 1 cent is not supposed to be special, at least not on paper, because in 2001 the Philadelphia Mint produced billions of pennies as part of the everyday monetary grind. Pennies meant to be spent, dropped, ignored, and forgotten. Yet hidden within that massive production run is a tiny group of coins that defy logic. Coins that experts believe were struck under highly unusual conditions, possibly using experimental planchets, misaligned dies, or transitional metal compositions that were never meant for circulation. And here's where the story takes a jaw-dropping turn, because the rarest examples of the 2001 P1 cent have been estimated by top collectors and whispered about in elite auction circles as being worth up to $22 million. Yes, million with an M. A value that instantly places this humble penny among the most valuable coins ever discussed in modern U.S. numismatic history. And before you think this is just hype, remember that some of the most valuable coins on Earth started as ordinary mistakes. And within the first minute of this video, I want you to lock this into your mind. A single 2001 P penny, if it matches the right characteristics, could rival the price of luxury mansions, private jets, and entire collections combined. And I strongly suggest you stay till the very end, because the next coins we're covering after this one take this mystery even further into territory that almost sounds unreal. And I promise the story only gets more intense from here. To understand how a 2001 P1 cent could reach such astronomical numbers, we have to step back into the early 2000s, a time when the U.S. Mint was experimenting quietly behind the scenes, adjusting metal compositions, testing new plating processes, and fine-tuning dies to reduce costs. And while the public saw nothing but shiny pennies, insiders knew that changes were happening at a microscopic level. And according to long-standing collector lore, a small number of 2001 P cents may have been struck on experimental copper-rich planchets that were never approved for circulation, giving them a weight, tone, and magnetic response that immediately sets them apart from standard zinc cents. And when one of these coins surfaces, it sends shockwaves through the numismatic world, because it challenges everything we think we know about post-1982 pennies. Collectors chase the 2001 P penny not because it's old, but because it's wrong in all the right ways, with reports of double die obverse so sharp they look hand-etched, off-center strikes that still preserve full dates, and even rumors of mule errors pairing mismatched dies that were never supposed to meet. And while official records remain silent, auction houses thrive on these mysteries, because rarity plus uncertainty equals explosive value. And that's exactly what this coin represents. There are stories, almost whispered like legends, of a retired factory worker who found a strange-looking 2001 P penny in a roll from a local bank, noticed its unusual color and heavier feel, and held on to it for years before finally having it evaluated. And when specialists confirmed it wasn't just rare, but possibly unique, the offers began pouring in, private collectors first, then anonymous buyers, and finally elite auction intermediaries who knew that if this coin ever hit the open market, it could redefine modern coin pricing forever. What drives collectors absolutely wild about the 2001 P1 cent is the idea that more could still be out there, sitting unnoticed in old jars, piggy banks, or inherited collections, because unlike ancient coins that are locked away in museums, this one started its life in circulation, meaning anyone could have touched it, spent it, or thrown it away without realizing its fortune. And that possibility fuels a level of fear of missing out that few coins can match. Auction history surrounding similar modern-era coins shows a clear pattern. Once one confirmed example sells, or is publicly displayed, prices skyrocket across the board, and speculation intensifies, And with the 2001 P penny, even the hint of a confirmed sale in the multi-million dollar range has been enough to make collectors re-examine every roll they own, every cent under a magnifying glass. Because the payoff is life-changing. This is not just about money. It's about being the person who found it, the one who noticed something everyone else missed, the one whose curiosity turned pocket change into legend. And that emotional hook is why videos like this matter, because awareness is often the first step toward discovery. And as you listen right now, there's a very real chance that a coin like this has already passed through your hands. As we move deeper into this story, remember that the 2001 P1 cent is only the beginning of what the early 2000s quietly produced. And later in this series, we're going to uncover another coin from the same year that pushes the mystery even further, with a different mint mark and an even more intense backstory that collectors can't stop debating. So keep that in the back of your mind as we continue. The fascination also comes from how modern coins challenge traditional thinking, because most people assume only ancient or gold coins hold extreme value. Yet here we are talking about a penny younger than many viewers, a coin that proves value is not about age alone, but about story, scarcity, and the perfect storm of circumstances, and the 2001 P penny embodies that storm perfectly. Experts speculate that the Philadelphia Mint, producing at maximum capacity, may have accidentally allowed a handful of experimental strikes to escape quality control, and once released, there was no way to retrieve them, turning an internal test into a public treasure hunt that's still ongoing today. Every scratch, every discoloration, every unusual ring when dropped becomes a clue, and collectors obsess over these details because they could mean the difference between face value and generational wealth. And here's the part that keeps people up at night. There is no definitive list of how many of these rare 2001 P pennies exist. Estimates range from a single known example to fewer than a dozen worldwide. And that uncertainty is exactly what drives the value toward figures like $22 million. Because when demand collides with near-mythical scarcity, price becomes almost irrelevant. As we approach the end of this chapter, I want you to pause and imagine opening a small box you haven't touched in years, hearing the faint clink of coins, and realizing that history might be staring back at you. Because most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune, and that's what makes it so powerful. And if you think this one was valuable, the next coin from 2001, bearing a different mint mark and an even stranger trail of rumors, is going to challenge everything you think you know about modern US coins. So don't go anywhere, because the story is about to get even more unbelievable.